Welcome back. Welcome to the second ever edition of the Puck Power Rankings. It's a different set of pucks this week, so I've brought the board and the camera closer together because there's the possibility that some of these may be hard to make out. I don't know. I always watch things on my computer or my TV, so I don't generally watch videos on my phone very often, but I understand a lot of people do. So, that being said, we're going to get into there's been a lot of movement, and that's, of course, understandable, and I do not pay as much attention to the record as clearly people in the comment section do. There's a lot of, well, this team's 4-2. How can they be behind this team that's 3-3? Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's not just about record. Power rankings is supposed to be about trying to figure out which teams are playing better, and this is why I try to watch as much hockey as humanly possible, watching every game. I wouldn't be getting up on a Saturday and spending time to watch 2.5 hours of the Islanders and the Predators, unless it was especially early in the season. You know, it's not like they're division rivals. This is why I do it. This is why I watch every game that I can. Should angle this down a little bit. There we go. So you can see that's 25. I mean, you know, you figured out the 24 here and 26, but still. All right, let's go ahead and get into this. So number 32, same spot as last week as Arizona. So yeah, the Coyotes at 32. Poor Howler, right? So we start off with Howler. That's right, it is the mascots week. Yes, Howler, Arizona, number 32. Number 31, same spot as last week, is Tommy Hawk and the Blackhawks. So this is interesting in that these are the two teams that have yet to win a game. So it's predictable that they would be at the bottom of the board. It's predictable that we would be seeing Chicago and Arizona where they are. So, yeah, Tommy Hawk, number 31. Number 30, same spot as last week too, Montreal Canadiens. There's UP. Number 30, and again, so there's no movement at the bottom of the board because there wasn't enough that went Montreal's way that had me bump them ahead of anybody else. So that's an issue, right? If you're a Montreal fan, it's been a rough start to the season. So yeah, these teams all stay the same. Number 29, dropping one spot from where they were last week, is LA. Now for the Kings, they got to win this week, right? But who was it over? Well, it was over Montreal. So what that did was it ensured that they stayed ahead of Montreal on this board. So yeah, Bailey, LA Kings, number 29. This is not a power ranking of the mascots either. I've already done power rankings of mascots. That was years ago. So, yeah, there's that. Number 28, dropping 6 spots from where they were last week. And it already feels like we're getting into a pattern that's not very good, and that's Vancouver. They came home from what was a pretty good road trip, and they've lost all 3 games to start this long homestand. So, for Vancouver, I don't have much choice but to have them in 28th spot. I would love to have them higher. You know, that's the team that, of all the teams in the league, that I root for, and they're 28th. It's been a rough time. Number 27, dropping 1 spot from where they were last week, and that's the Anaheim Ducks. So yeah, for Anaheim, they did come back from 3 goals down twice, which is impressive. Winning. They've got to start winning more. They're still stuck on 2 wins. So it's not all about record. And this is where that kind of proves it, that I think Vancouver's overall record is better than the Ducks, but I don't have them ahead of the Ducks because the Ducks are showing that fire and that fight back, and we're waiting on that with Vancouver. At this point, may show up. There's still time. It is very early in the season. Number 26, moving up 3 spots from where they were last week. They're not back to where they started the season, though, and they don't have a mascot puck because they don't have a mascot, and that's Seattle. So there's a great sadness on a few fronts with this one, that Seattle doesn't have a mascot, so that stands out. That'll probably change, and when it does, I'll have a mascot puck for Seattle. But at this point, yeah. So Seattle had a relatively good week. They beat Minnesota. They won, I think it's 2 out of 3 this week. So yeah, they move up. They've absolutely earned their spot. So LA, Vancouver, and Anaheim fall behind them. And this is the first time, I believe this is the first time that Seattle's ahead of Vancouver on the power ranking. So if you're looking at this and going, oh, where's the rivalry? They're both in the bottom row. Number 25, same spot as last week, is Columbus. Now, Columbus had moved up, and then they went through that 4-0 loss against the New York Rangers, and that put them back down in the bottom row. But they're at the front of the bottom row. So for Columbus, it's, again, they're 4-3, but the record isn't everything. So again, I don't pay as much attention to the record. I really don't as the season goes along either. I do update the board daily. You guys just get to see the Saturday snapshot of where everybody is. So Columbus is 25th. Number 24. Moving up 3 spots from last week, moving out of the bottom row. And that's the Nashville Predators, who have one of the more popular when it comes to mascots in the NHL. So Nasher and the Preds move up to 24. The win that they get over the Islanders today, it's impressive. They're showing some fight back, and so I've got them here, but I don't know that I see them necessarily as a playoff threat right now, and so I want to see more from them. And this is really where early in the season the power rankings can be a little bit tough, because I want to see more from Nashville than I've seen thus far. I think this upcoming week should be a good one. Number 23, dropping 11 spots. This is the biggest drop on the board, and it's the Dallas Stars. Dallas is back, not winning games that are close, not scoring goals. This is an issue. So Dallas takes a nosedive from 12, from 12 to 23. Nosedive, new T-shirt from THG. But this is why I always get a kind of a kick out of too when people say, oh, he just favors this team or that team. I don't favor the teams I cheer for. Dallas is all the way down at 23 after a bad week, so dropping 11 spots. So it was a rough week for Dallas. Number 22, dropping 2 spots from last week. And this is an example of a team that's actually playing pretty well. They just haven't had the results, and that's Ottawa. Now, by virtue of their victory over Dallas and the way that they get that victory, which is it wasn't really close in the end, I have to have Ottawa ahead of Dallas in my opinion. And again, if you look at the advanced stats and all the numbers, Ottawa's playing well, they just haven't had the results. So we'll see if maybe that win over Dallas starts them climbing. I would love to see Ottawa climbing. Again, teams I cheer for are pretty low down on the board. It has not been a lot of fun from that perspective of watching hockey. I always enjoy watching hockey in general. Number 21, dropping 6 spots from last week. And I know they win tonight. I know they get back to 500. But for me, Toronto, there are still concerns. The win over Chicago, good. They got that. You have to beat Chicago. They're down here. The win tonight over Detroit, nice. But, again, they've really got to get going on a run here. And Matthews hasn't really got it going. Marner's still kind of cold as well. And so there are definite concerns. The ability to put teams away being a concern that I have when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I have them at 21 on the board. Number 20, dropping 1 spot from where they were last week. Another team I'm concerned with, and that's Vegas. Vegas hasn't. So again, Vegas had a good week record wise, but I didn't see a lot from Vegas this week to tell me, oh, okay, so they're out of this funk. They're out of this injury funk that they've been in, and it seems to be, an issue. They weren't able to really keep the Ducks down. The Ducks came back and they tied that, and so I really didn't move Vegas up for a shootout win over Anaheim. Because again, the shootouts, I do treat them like they're ties. In some cases, they may get some more weight than they might with others. But for Vegas, I have them at 20. Because it's the Pacific Division, they're not in any real danger right now, but it feels like they could absolutely do better. Number 19, dropping 6 spots from where I had them last week, Pittsburgh. The injuries have been an issue for Pittsburgh. They got Crosby back tonight, but there's still that struggle there. And they don't have Letang, they don't have Malkin. They got Carter back as well, so things should start getting better for them, but again, they're not getting the results now. And they've won 3 out of 8. So the combination of the results and then that game tonight, it just wasn't there. So Pittsburgh drops out of the top half of the board, which does happen from time to time. They usually charge right back up and end up in the top row not long after that. Number 18, moving up 5 spots from last week. And I think this is the highest they've ever been in a power rankings, I'll say over the last 3 years. And that's Detroit. And there's Al the Octopus. He's the one mascot that isn't actually a mascot. Like, there isn't somebody who wears like an octopus costume and runs around Little Caesars, which is a miss, isn't it? There should be somebody who's dressed up like an octopus running around Little Caesars, because there should be. But Detroit, I do move them up 5 spots. I really like their compete level. They're not quite getting the results you might want with that compete level. But I really think they're underrated. I go as far as to say I think they're underrated, and they could stay in this race a little bit longer than any of us would have thought at the start of the year. Number 17, moving up 4 spots from last week, is New Jersey. So the Devils, I did mention in the preview this morning that I wanted to believe where the Devils were going. So they beat Pittsburgh. Very good result there. Bratt finally gets his first goal of the year. So New Jersey moves up 4 spots. I think they were only 1-1 this week, but again, I like the way they're playing. There was some confidence in that game in Pittsburgh, so they move up to 17. We'll see if they're in the top half next week. Who saw that coming? Number 16, moving up 8 spots from last week. This is a remarkable rise. They've risen 16 spots since the start of the season, and that's Buffalo. The Buffalo Sabres are in the top half. Now, I understand that there's a lot of power rankings out there that may have Buffalo a lot higher. Again, I want to see more. I'm hesitant on some of this. I don't think that their game against Anaheim was a great one. I think because, again, right, the power ranking should be about who's playing really the best hockey. And so for me with Buffalo, they're getting the results. It's dragging them up, but it's taking some time. Because the first year I did power rankings, it was all just reactionary. And you would have a team go up 8 spots one week, drop 6 the next week, go up 7 the week after. It became, just reactionary. And it didn't have any weight to it. So I don't do it that way anymore. I try to put a lot more thought into it than it had. Back then there was no thought in it. It was just, okay, so this is where they're at. Number 15, moving up 3 spots from last week. Concerned with how they played tonight, but Reimer kind of steals that one. So for Winnipeg, they move up to 15. They didn't get the perfect record in California, but it felt like the team they were against tonight had a lot of fire, and they really wanted to prove themselves. And so Winnipeg, they don't move up as far as they were going to this week, but they're in the top half of the board, and I think Winnipeg's playing pretty well. Reimer was just fantastic tonight. Number 14. This team drops 3 spots, but while they drop 3 spots, they don't drop as much as they were going to. So this is San Jose. There's Sharky there. And what's interesting with Sharky and his team there is that, they've dropped 3 out of 4, but that win tonight, I don't know, it feels big, doesn't it? It feels like winning when they were missing so many players could end up being one of those moments that we look back on in April and we say San Jose cemented themselves as an actual playoff threat and then built on it based on that game against Winnipeg where they had so many players that were out. So we'll see how long those players are out. I would think not all 7 of them are going to be out for a long time. That's not generally how this has been working this year. But San Jose showed tonight. They're fighters, and I like that. I really do. Number 13, dropping 5 spots from where they were last week, but I think there's a reason to believe that these guys are potentially going to end up back in that top row sooner than later, and that's the New York Rangers. So the Rangers have been, the funny thing is, sometimes they've looked better in a loss than they have in a win, and they don't have a mascot. That's wrong, right? So this is where the Rangers not having a mascot really stands out, because, ta-da, Rangers don't have a mascot. But I have them in the top 13, obviously. They got passed. What happened this week was there were a couple of teams that passed them. I'm wearing the gear of one that definitely passed the Rangers this week. And the Rangers didn't look necessarily fantastic in the loss against Calgary, which says a lot about both how well Calgary's playing and the struggles the Rangers were having. So the Rangers may be a team that bounces back next week, right? So I still have them in the top half. Above them, moving up 2 spots from last week, are the New York Islanders. Now, what's impressive with the Islanders is they haven't played a home game yet. They're over halfway through this long, forever road trip. It's a 13-game road trip, and they're above 500. It's not a pretty record they have, but they're getting points, and they're managing to eke out those points when they have to be tired. This has to be, a very long, arduous trip that they're on. And so, yeah, I've been impressed with the Islanders. I think they're getting it together. And I don't bet against Barry Trotz's teams, so I have them at 12. Number 11. Dropping 4 spots from last week. I really thought that they were going to start to look like themselves, but for Tampa, not yet. They will. I still believe that they will, but I'm starting to have some concerns with Tampa when it comes to, where are they going to finish? Obviously, Kucherov out for 2.5 months. That's going to hurt them. And so there's definitely some reason to be concerned with Tampa. They do not have the depth they had last year. They do not have, and I've seen people saying crazy things like, "Oh, they'll just go get Eichel." Look, that's not going to happen. They're not going to go out and get Eichel without losing anything off their roster. And I mean, even Eichel, if he got the surgery right now, he wouldn't be ready for another 3 weeks. That's at the very least. He wouldn't be ready for 3 weeks if he got the surgery he wanted. So, yeah, the idea that there's a quick fix for Tampa, I don't think that there is. Vasilevsky's playing very well. The one start from Elliott tells you they may need Vasilevsky for 65 to 70 games this year. That could happen. That could be a thing. So we'll see. But Tampa, they, again, much like the Rangers, they got passed. Number 10, dropping 5 spots from last week. It was a rough week for them. Rough night tonight as well. And that's Minnesota. So the Wild do stay in the top 10. But that loss against Seattle and then the loss tonight against Colorado, eventually it's going to take its toll. So they drop to number 10. But still, top 10 both weeks that I've done this since the start of the season. It's been a decent start to the season for Minnesota. Just there's some concerning elements to their game. And the 5-minute major tonight really just took them out of it. Really did. I understand the frustration with McKinnon not getting a fighting major in that. I totally get it. He should have. But still, Minnesota wasn't winning that game. Number 9, up 7 spots from where they were last week. There's Gritty. There's Philly. Now, when I got these mascot pucks, Gritty wasn't in the set because Gritty came out after the set was created. So I had to order the Gritty puck for myself and did, and I'm glad that I did because otherwise this would be a very sad power rankings. Gritty and the Philadelphia Flyers at 9 would have just, without Gritty, it just wouldn't work. The Flyers have played very well. Now, they had a rough night tonight against Calgary, but they just looked tired. They looked spent. I've been really impressed with what the Flyers have been able to do. So the Flyers are almost top row. Really close to top row. Probably stay in the top row if they beat in Calgary. They didn't beat Calgary. They end up falling behind somebody else tonight. But they're as close as you can get, right? Number 8. Moving up 2 spots from last week, and I think they're getting it together. There's still talk of their slow start, but I think Colorado's starting to put it together. McKinnon's looking like McKinnon. Darcy Kemper had a bunch of saves tonight, and really, yeah, I think they're putting it together. So we'll see whether or not that's the case. Next week we'll see if they stay in the top row, but Colorado is in the top row right now. So number 8. Number 7. Moving up 2 spots as well. They had a rough week because they had really tough competition. But Boston showed some fight back tonight. And, against Carolina and Florida, that's a tough call. That's not easy. Those aren't exactly gimme games. So for Boston, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt of putting them in the top row. And then we'll see this week how it goes. I am concerned about the lack of production. I am concerned that the ability for Carolina and Florida to control the top line for Boston could be something that could get out to the rest of the league, but at this point it hasn't. And so I'm putting Boston there. They did break the undefeated streak of Florida. It was in a shootout, but still, they showed that they could hang with Florida in both games. Just Florida, once they took over in that first game. Man, Florida is very, very impressive. Number 6. Same spot as last week, is the Washington Capitals. So for the Caps, a shutout win over Arizona, that's one of those ones that doesn't move you up. If you lose against Arizona, you get dropped. If you beat Arizona, it's kind of like, well, yeah. And that's where power rankings don't necessarily just reflect on the record, it sometimes reflects on who you've beaten. So if you're playing against Chicago, if you're playing against Arizona or Montreal or LA, I'll go as far up as LA. There's less. It's more of a risk than it is a reward. So you're not as likely to move up in the rankings if you beat those teams as you are to move down if those teams beat you. For the Capitals, we'll see how they go from here. But again, I have them at 6th. They've looked really good at times. They've looked unorganized at others. We'll see how things go. But at least Samsonov looks good, right? Number 5, moving up 12 spots from last week. Calgary. This is the Calgary Flames of 2018, 2019? They're looking like those Calgary Flames. They absolutely do right now. Johnny Gaudreau is starting to get points again. Monahan got off the schneid tonight. A lot of things are going well. And Markstrom is starting to look like Markstrom from when he was in Vancouver. So that in and of itself is a huge boost to the Calgary Flames and their chances. So they make a big jump, that big road trip. And then that first game at home off of a big road trip where you've got all those wins, it's easy to have that down, you return and you're down in that first game. It's hard to get up for it. Not Calgary, not tonight. They are starting games very well. They get out to a lead, and they're very good at protecting it. They look like a legit team this year. We'll see if they can stay in that spot. Number 4, same spot as last week. So now we're into the top tier teams, and St. Louis, there's Louis. St. Louis stays 4th. For the Blues, it honestly is. They're a team that I would say look like contenders right now. That being said, they did beat Chicago 1-0, and yeah, right? So I don't bump them up for the win over Chicago, obviously. And so I have them in 4th, and we'll see between St. Louis and Calgary which one stays. We'll see if they swap spots next week. That wouldn't necessarily surprise me either. But these are, right now, to this point in the season, top-tier teams. Number 3, dropping 1 spot from last week, is Edmonton. So Oilers fans were excited at being number 2 last week, and they were really hoping to get to number 1, but they did lose their first game this week. It's not the end of the world, right? They beat Vancouver tonight, and yeah, I mean they've got McDavid, they've got Draisaitl. Koskinen's looked very good for the most part through this early part of the season. Mike Smith should be back during this week. Edmonton's a real threat to end up number 1 on this board. The problem is numbers 2 and 1 haven't lost in regulation. And they've both looked extremely good. And they play about the same style as one another. It's remarkable. I can't wait till they play against each other. So number 2 on the board, they drop 1 spot from last week, and that's Florida. Florida, obviously, this week, that their coach gets replaced. Now under Andrew Brunette, they're 1-0-1. The Florida Panthers, I have said since the start of the season, I think, probably the second best team in the Atlantic. The thing is, Tampa Bay doesn't look like the best team in the Atlantic. So with Tampa being out, Florida, best team in the Atlantic. And they're very good at every aspect of the game. Their blue line is underrated. Ekblad's underrated. Uyghur is absolutely underrated. And Bobrovsky's bounced back, and Spencer Knight looks very good. This is a scary good team. So the only team that can beat them, moving up 2 spots from last week, is Carolina. The Carolina Hurricanes, absolutely amazing week for them. They're still undefeated in regulation or otherwise. And so, for Carolina, they're off to a fantastic start if you peg them as being a contender. And I had concerns with the new players being brought in and the players they lost. You know what? They haven't missed a beat. Freddie Anderson looks great. Freddie Anderson looks like he could end up winning the Vezina this year, which there might be a fan base that would lose it if that actually happened, but it could. So, really, honestly, great start for Carolina. They've been great, and to me, they are number 1 on the board. I can't think of anybody else right now that I would put ahead of them, other than maybe Florida. But, again, I can't wait till these teams play against one another. The one thing I will say is this, too. With the schedule being as balanced as it is now, I think for people who've wanted to see the playoff format change to 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15 in the standings, and so on, I think there's an argument to be made for that now that we're in a 32-team league where the most you play against another team is 4 times and the fewest is twice. I really honestly think you can make an argument for 1 versus 16 and so on, which would be a fascinating way of deciding things. Of course, then we wouldn't know until the last day of the year who would play against each other. For people who wonder, it's networks that basically really like the playoff rivalries, the divisions, that being the setup for the first 2 rounds. They like that. They think that's more marketable. That's why we don't have another system right now. On top of, I don't think Bettman has an appetite for it either. And of course, he works for the owners. So if he says he doesn't have the appetite, neither do the owners. But there you go. Your power rankings for the day before Halloween 2021. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. And again, the record is not as important as how I believe that the team is playing. This is why I watch as many games as humanly possible, and I do this to the best of my ability. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.